4, 3, 2, 1.
Broadcasting live from the Newsmax studio in New York City. A fusion of politics, commentary, entertainment, and sports. Steve and his team bring you the latest news and opinion now. Here is Steve Malzberg.
But if it's not for the lack of trying by Hamas.
You know, when I listen to people describing Palestinian faction as being terrorists, and they have terrorist intentions, and I look at the number of civilian kills here, I ask myself, who is the terrorist in this confrontation, this conflict? The one who killed 1,432, 80% of them civilians, or Hamas, which killed only 57 Israeli soldiers and 1 Israeli civilian? I think,
with all due respect, that's because they're not very good.
Well,
they're certainly trying to kill more Israelis.
Good for Jake Tapper, who I've criticized for some of his interviews. Joining us now is Cliff May, as mentioned, president of the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies and national security analyst. Hey, Cliff.
Good to be with you.
Good to talk to you. All right, so, you know, I got to tell you, I'm so glad we're talking about this because it's cathartic for me. I really can't take it anymore. When did Hamas and Hamas statements and Hamas claims, when did the media start recognizing them as if they were coming from a nation state?
Well, there has been a credulousness among the media, at the United Nations, among a lot of so-called human rights organizations for a very long time when it comes to Hamas and when it comes to a lot of other jihadist organizations. I think that's the phrase I would use. They're also terrorist organizations. It's also true that if, and I say this sadly, if you're a reporter in Gaza, you better do what Hamas tells you to do and report the way Hamas tells you to report, which is why if you've been watching any network TV at all, you have not seen Hamas fighters shooting, running away, launching missiles, any of it. It's as if the Israelis are fighting ghosts. What you see are rubble, what you see, and various civilians, women crying, children wounded or killed. When the clip you just played, it's very interesting. I was in Israel just a few weeks ago. Among other things, I was at the airport when Hamas was launching missiles, trying to do at Israel's international commercial airport exactly what was done over the skies of Ukraine, hit a passenger jet full of civilians and murder all of them. The only reason they didn't do that is A, their missiles were not quite sophisticated enough, and B, Iron Dome, a great feat of engineering produced by the Israelis with U.S. help, was knocking the missiles out of the sky. But this is the way Hamas operates. They maximize civilian casualties on their side for PR benefit, and then they're taken very seriously by a lot of the media and a lot of other actors in the international community, so-called.
And as you said, it's very, and as you have written about at fullcomment.nationpost.com, Israel has to keep it going in the face of all this ridiculous coverage. I mean, even the president today said that he finds it hard, while he condemned Hamas unequivocally, while he said Hamas broke the ceasefire, which, by the way, many networks are still saying as we speak, well, there are conflicting claims from both sides as to who broke the ceasefire, which is mind-boggling. So even Obama said Hamas did it. Obama said they got to give the soldier back. It's been called barbaric what they did by the State Department. But Obama did say that he's finding it hard to reconcile Israel's right to defend itself with the dead civilians in Gaza. And I think that he's always got to get that little but in there, no matter how he can do it.
The fact of the matter is, and this is a fact and it's provable, no nation in history, no nation in the world has done more to avoid civilian casualties than the Israelis are doing right now. There is simply no comparison. Nobody else has ever tried so hard. It is impossible to do because Hamas uses innocent men, women, and children as human shields, or as they call it, martyrs. Now, this is not speculation that they're doing this. We know that they're doing this. And we know it not just from the Israelis who have to see this every day. We have instances of Hamas leaders writing memos, getting on Hamas TV and telling women and children, stay in targeted buildings. We need you to do that, to act as martyrs. Don't forget, one of the slogans of Hamas, it's in their charter, we should talk about their charter, is that we in Hamas, we love death more than the Jews love life. How you can say that and then say what victims we are that we get killed when we use our women and children to protect us, to protect our missiles and our tunnels is astonishing. And yet so many people are willing to buy this line, and how they can look themselves in the mirror having done so, I just don't understand.
And Clifford, you do a great job in the piece pointing out the history of the situation, the very short history of the situation. You know, we keep hearing Palestinian leaders and spokesmen, mouthpieces for Hamas on the networks talking about how the occupation. Israel gave the Gaza Strip, I'll never say back to the Palestinians, but gave it to the Palestinians. And they left it with greenhouses, and Jewish philanthropists from all over the world donated money to build up the infrastructure and give the Palestinian people this head start. And it was like, you ever see, you know, the Christmas, day after Christmas sales, when the stores open, you see all these people crashing through the doors and they ransack through the store. The second they let, the Palestinians into Gaza, so to speak, they just tore everything apart that was left for them. So there's no occupation. There wasn't even the border closures or the blockade until Hamas took over and started lobbing rockets into Israel. But it's all distorted.
Precisely so. And you hear all the time on major media people talking about the occupation of Gaza and not being challenged for that. As you point out, the occupation ended in 2005. I happen to have been in Israel then as well doing some reporting. And it was not until 2 years later that there was even a blockade, and that's only a military blockade. Food, medicine, even building materials, clothing, anything for aid or humanitarian purposes is absolutely allowed in and is going in even during this conflict. The trucks are crossing the border, bringing humanitarian relief to the people of Gaza. The blockade is only meant to keep out missiles, and it hasn't done that actually quite successfully, as we now know, and other weapons of war that can be used by Hamas in their attempts to kill Israelis and to do what is in their charter to do, which is to obliterate Israel, to wipe it off the face of the earth and kill as many Jews as possible. That is what Hamas is committed to doing in its charter. I can only hope that people like President Obama and Secretary of State Kerry have spent the time or will to sit down and read Hamas's charter, because they are not trying to hide their aims. Their aims are genocidal. And the idea that we would in any way want to support that strikes me as really beyond redemption. Now, I think the Israelis are going to have a changed attitude as a result of what we just seen. In the past, the Israelis have considered Hamas a sort of a nuisance. And they talk about mowing the lawn. Every couple of years you had to go in and take out the weapons that you hadn't managed to filter through your so-called military blockade. At this point, I think much more needs to be done. I think Hamas needs to, at the very minimum, be disarmed, certainly of any missiles and of the attack tunnels through which they have on occasion, but they plan to do much more, send terrorists into Israel to kill women and children, and men as well, not just those in uniform, and drag others beneath the earth as hostages. You had terrorists trained carrying tranquilizers and handcuffs, burly guys who are going to bring these people and drag them under the earth and throw them into dungeons and hope to use them to wipe out Israel, or at least trade for as many benefits as they can get. Hamas deserves no rewards out of this conflict. They should get none, and it should be brought home to the people of Gaza and other Palestinians that the sacrifices they are being called upon to make and the suffering they are undergoing is bringing no benefits to them whatsoever. Hamas is a very terrible organization for them as well as for Israel.
All right, one more piece that or angle to this that you covered in your piece, and that is the worldwide response, the worldwide protests in the streets of Paris and Germany and elsewhere, and the storming of a synagogue in Paris. And you talk about, you say, imagine the outrage of French Jews in response to a terrorist attack against Israelis were to storm a mosque in Paris, or if Italian Catholics, in response to the Islamic State's persecution of Iraqi Christians, threw stones at Islamic worshippers in Rome. Of course, that's exactly what's happening to the Jews and to the synagogues in these places. And there's as much silence from this administration about that as there is about the killing and persecution of Christians constantly all around the world.
Yeah, that's what this should be very troubling. Look, the project of radical anti-Semitism in the 20th century was a Europe without Jews. The project of radical anti-Semitism in the 21st century is a Middle East without Jews, but also without Christians, and also without other minorities. And the fact that so much of the media and so many of our political and diplomatic leaders are turning a blind eye to this, and meanwhile are flagellating themselves over the so-called mistreatment of Palestinians, is really a remarkable act of willful blindness and self-delusion.
Yeah, it is. Clifford May, great to talk to you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Take care. All right, folks. Very interesting indeed. We're going to be back with the contributor for the Daily Caller, Matt Lewis, senior contributor. In fact, I'm going to look forward to talking to him. And in the following segment, I'm going to address Joe Scarborough and what he said on his show yesterday. Outrageous remarks, in my view, made about Israel and their actions, which are made in self-defense, misrepresenting who Hamas is, and taking me to task really for tweeting out what Alan Dershowitz. Alan Dershowitz was on the show. We had an interview, and Alan Dershowitz, agreed with me and brought up Mika's remark about we'll be back with more Morning Jew when she meant to say Morning Joe. She corrected herself. And then I brought up Mika's father, who I view as a horrifically anti-Israel at the very least. That's putting it mildly. And Mr. Dershowitz agreed with me, and we both winked and nodded. I think he has a problem with Israel. I know he does, and I think he has a problem beyond just with Israel. So we're going to address all that in a couple of segments from now. You want to stick around and watch that. But when we come back, as I said, it'll be Matt Lewis right here on the one and only Steve Malzberg Show, except no imitations. This is Newsmax Television.